A group of abducted people relies on online likes to survive a game where they injure themselves for the virtual world's entertainment. Rachel Phillips, a science teacher, wakes up chained in a cell with no recollection of how she got there. As she tries to find a way out, a piercing noise echoes through the room, causing her immense pain. When it stops, she checks her surroundings and finds a box of weapons. A sound brings her attention to a pneumatic tube, which gives her some water and biscuits. After eating, she finds a sign on the wall telling her to smile because she's on camera. Confused, she walks closer to it and realizes that there's a screen playing footage of the other people who are in separate cells like hers. As she observes them closer, she realizes that she knows all the other captives as they're her co-workers. The noise suddenly blares again before the screen shows a man who introduces himself as the Warden. He explains that everyone has been selected to participate in a game called And Then There Were, where everyone's survival depends on how many likes they get from the virtual world. The Warden elaborates that the online audiences are to select who gets to play first, and basically who gets to live. Everyone listens keenly to the instructions, but player number 6, a janitor named Jose Mendez, challenges the Warden to face him. He claims that he won't participate, so the Warden announces that there's an explosive device implanted at the base of everyone's skulls. This doesn't faze Jose, so the Warden triggers the device, causing the man's head to explode. Seeing this, everyone screams in horror. Thinking it's like an escape room game, player number 8, Mr. Curtis, removes his collar to get the device out of his nape. He successfully does this, but the device ejects itself through his skull, immediately killing him. With 2 of the players already dead, only 6 remain, and they're about to play the real game. The events are being live-streamed online, throwing the local police into chaos. The site where it plays is encrypted, so they can't trace where it's coming from. Detective Casey and Detective Tanner are assigned to the case, although the 2 think that the game is a hoax. Meanwhile, Rachel discovers a vent that's connected to the neighboring cell. She then calls out to Selena, an English teacher who's crying in her cell. The 2 check on each other, but neither know what's happening. Their conversation is interrupted when the blaring noise sounds again. The Warden then tells them to go in front of their monitors, and if they refuse to comply, they'll be eliminated. However, the gym teacher named Kim resists and keeps banging on the door, demanding to be released. To her horror, the door opens and traps her hand between 2 sharp blades. To make matters worse, her chains tighten, causing her neck to snap while her arm gets torn. The detectives witness this through the live stream and realize that this might not be a stunt after all. Just then, a young man barges into the station and claims to be Jose's nephew. His uncle went missing last night, so Casey commands someone to get the man's statement, hoping that it'll help their case. After this, he sets out with Tanner to find where the live stream signal might be coming from. Elsewhere, the game finally begins, and the audience chooses Rachel as their first player. The Warden instructs her to select an object from her trunk, so she takes a box cutter. The man then commands her to remove her right fingernail, and with no choice, she does as she's told. While Rachel whimpers in pain, the head of the school's board of directors, Mr. Turner, asserts that the game is too cruel, so it must stop. However, the Warden replies that his position in the school no longer holds power in this situation, which shuts him up. Meanwhile, Rachel finally removes her nail in agony, thus ending the first round. Soon, player number 4, Principal John Bruno, speaks with Rachel through the vents, and they reckon that the Warden's motives must be personal. Another player named Roberts joins the conversation, encouraging them to remain calm and strong until they figure out how to escape. The alarm blares, signaling the start of the next round. This time, everyone is tasked to grab an object from the trunk, which they'll use to injure themselves. The game begins with Selena, who cuts herself with a razor while John hurts himself with a knife. The Warden skips Rachel and puts Roberts first, but he lashes out and bangs the wall with his hammer. As a result, the Warden sprays acid on his face and warns him to comply or he'll die. After this, Rachel goes next and bravely pierces a knife through her palm. Finally, the Warden calls on Turner, but he refuses to participate at first. When the Warden doesn't back down, however, he's forced to cut a finger with some pliers. As the players soak in their own blood, the audiences begin voting. Turner gets the most likes, while Selena receives the least, which means she's eliminated. The Warden then releases a toxic gas into her cell, so she quickly takes her clothes off to block the air vents. However, all this is useless, and it doesn't take long for the gas to kill her. Elsewhere, the detectives finally learn that the players are all staff members of Wooten High, thus giving them a clue. Meanwhile, John checks on Rachel, expressing his condolences over Selena's death. He says that she will be missed, though this makes Rachel bring up another teacher who was recently fired. She then points out how the nursery rhyme 10 Little Indians always plays after one of them dies, thinking that it's a clue. She brings up someone named Charlotte. He dismisses this, asserting that the woman is dead, therefore she couldn't be involved in their situation. The alarm blares again, indicating that it's time for the next round. This time, the audience selects the object for the players and how they should use it. They choose the pliers, and the players must extract a tooth of their choice. The game starts with Roberts, but he refuses to do anything. To his surprise, the Warden announces that the audience gets to save a player of their choice. This almost relieves Roberts, but the Warden adds that he must earn it. Just then, a syringe shoots from a hole in the wall and straight into Roberts' chest. The Warden then explains that it's a mixture of horse steroids and other chemicals, which will cause gut-wrenching pain in his insides. True enough, Robert screams in pain, and in his desperate attempt to relieve himself, he cuts the painful parts with a knife. He starts to bleed excessively, which ultimately leads to his death. Afraid of dying next, Turner quickly extracts his own tooth and proudly shows it to the Warden. Meanwhile, Rachel throws up after what she witnessed and demands the Warden to reveal his motives. Just then, an image of her late friend, Charlotte Knight, appears on her screen. This confirms to Rachel that Charlotte, who used to be a teacher in the theater department at Wooten, is all linked to their situation. She reminds Turner that he forced a budget cut, so John defunded the art programs, thus leading to Charlotte losing her job. She then admits that she and the other teachers supported the decision, so Rachel asserts that this is the price for taking Charlotte's dreams away. The alarm calls their attention again, and a new round begins. The Warden suddenly accuses the three of them of killing an innocent life, and he starts singing the 10 Little Indians nursery song. Turner then corrects the Warden, saying that the proper term is Native American. However, Rachel points out that 10 Little Indians is also a novel and a play. In this piece, 10 people are invited by an unknown host to an isolated location, and they all get accused of murder and killed one by one. Charlotte wanted to perform this play at their school, but John deemed it inappropriate. This was how he convinced the rest of the staff to vote on dismantling the art department, thus canceling her show. Not long after, Charlotte died, and John says the coroner reported it was self-inflicted. To everyone's surprise, a mysterious voice replies that this information is false, which leads the players to think that the Warden isn't alone. Before the three can figure out who this person is, the Warden starts the next round. This time, the audience selects a drill as their weapon, but Turner refuses to participate. He claims to be the only one who joined that last round and should be exempted. However, the Warden claims it doesn't count since he actually pulled out a fake tooth earlier. As Turner keeps arguing, the Warden sprays him with kerosene and threatens to light him on fire. He then commands Turner to start the round, but the man decides to drill on his screen while cursing the Warden. However, the friction causes a spark, lighting the man on fire. Outside, the detectives have figured out that the events are happening around the warehouse district. Upon witnessing Turner's demise, Casey calls on his comrades and tells them to look for a cloud of smoke in the warehouse district, which might likely be from Turner's burnt corpse. Meanwhile, Rachel starts blaming John for Charlotte's death, but he reminds her that she signed the papers too. When Rachel replies that he blackmailed her into signing it, John argues that it wasn't his fault that she slept with Charlotte's husband. This stuns Rachel, who weakly defends that she was unaware that he was a married man. When she found out, she couldn't tell Charlotte, knowing that it'd destroy her. However, John reveals that he told Charlotte to deflect when the woman blamed him for ruining her life. This infuriates Rachel, realizing that they destroyed both the woman's career and marriage on the same day. Therefore, they're responsible for her death. Suddenly, the Warden returns and announces that it's time for the lightning round, which will determine the winner. This round will have 3 stages, and the player with the most likes will be granted their freedom. They're then given 2 minutes to strategize how to show the audience their desire to be liked. Instead of searching her items, Rachel advises John to refuse, reminding him that they're responsible for Charlotte's death anyway. Therefore, they should be punished. He rejects this idea, insisting that they're not at fault and this game is just for foolish revenge. This gives Rachel an idea. Before the round starts, Rachel tells the audience that Simon, Charlotte's husband, is the Warden. To her horror, the Warden laughs and presents a bound Simon on the screen. He then commands the two to start the round or else they'll die. With no choice, John breaks his middle finger with a hammer while Rachel cuts her forehead. Elsewhere, the detectives receive news from their comrades that they've located an area emitting smoke near the warehouse district. Back at the cells, the Warden announces that John is in the lead. Before he starts the second lightning round, he tells the players to guess who he is again. As a clue, he mentions that there's nothing like a woman scorned. This makes them think that Charlotte herself is behind this, though they're confused as they attended her funeral. Suddenly, Charlotte's mother, Mrs. Pine, appears behind the Warden and claims that she's avenging her daughter. She adds that the Warden is merely a hired hand doing the Lord's work, and he's even willing to help her without charge because he wants to serve justice. He then resumes the second lightning round. Rachel immediately grabs her instrument, but John refuses to participate, thinking that the Warden can't continue the game with only one player. Therefore, he decides that Rachel should be saved. With that, the Warden electrocutes him with his collar, killing him. Despite the man's sacrifice, Mrs. Pine isn't satisfied, so they force Rachel to extract her tooth. After she does, the Warden announces that Rachel still needs 10,000 likes to earn her freedom. With this, Rachel grabs a whip and continuously hits herself to gain the audience's mercy. Meanwhile, the detectives finally locate the warehouse and storm the place. The Warden hears them, so he goes out to deal with them, leaving Rachel in the hands of Mrs. Pine. The woman wants Rachel dead, so she refuses to make her stop her penance unless she reaches 10,000 likes. Beaten and bloody, Rachel resorts to exposing herself to the audience, hoping that it'll give her more likes. This works, and the scorned mother laughs at the woman's desperation. Elsewhere, the detectives hold the Warden at gunpoint, demanding him to take them to Rachel. However, he triggers a smoke bomb and escapes. Soon, Rachel only needs 2 more likes to finally win her freedom, but the round ends before she can reach the goal. Despite this, she claims to have already won. Rachel hits the camera with a whip, and Mrs. Pine loses contact with her. The old woman hysterically clicks on the buttons on the control panel in her desperate attempt to kill Rachel, but she gets caught off guard when something explodes. Elsewhere, Casey shoots the Warden, but it turns out to be Simon. Meanwhile, the Warden ambushes Tanner and kills him. When Casey finds his lifeless body, Mrs. Pine appears and pretends to be a victim. The injured Rachel then follows after her, so Casey quickly calls for an ambulance. However, the Warden answers him over the radio as he has broken into the detective's car. Because of this, he goes out to deal with him, leaving Rachel to Mrs. Pine. While he's away, Mrs. Pine asks Rachel how she escaped. The wounded woman recounts how she managed to remove the explosive device from her neck without removing her collar while John kept them distracted. She then tossed it by the door, and when she destroyed the camera, Mrs. Pine clicked random buttons, which ultimately triggered the device and allowed Rachel to escape. After revealing her trick, Rachel aims Tanner's gun at her captor. The woman pleads for her life, but Rachel pulls the trigger anyway. Unfortunately, Casey fails to capture the Warden. Soon, a new set of players wake up in their cells as the Warden begins another game.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.